Hi everyone, this is the second video of my four-part series responding to Greg Koukl's take on the solidness of the Christian worldview. Please check the links in the description for the other videos in this series. Greg Koukl was interviewed by Jim Daly, the president and CEO of Focus on the Family. The interview was about Greg's new book called The Story of Reality. In this video, I continue to respond to Greg's interview while playing Super Metroid. Links to the original material can be found in the video description, so you can check to make sure I'm not pulling any shenanigans in my editing or presentation of the source material. Please enjoy the analytical gaming. So come on, Greg. Give us something fresh and new. Let's not beat a dead horse with old, tired apologetics that have been debunked 1,000 times, please. Because those are not convincing. Not to people like me who have heard them all and just want to hear something new. Let's continue on.
First, about God and who is God is a first starting point.
Sure.
Is God real? Is God there? If yes, then what?
Yes. Well, I break down the story of reality into 5 components just to make it easy to follow and easy for Christians to communicate with others. And this is the backbone of the story, and it is basically the outline as well, okay? And those 5 words are God, man, Jesus, cross, resurrection. Here I mean the final resurrection to reward and judgment. Notice that you have all the components of a good story. You have all the components of a worldview: creation, fall, redemption, and restoration.
Who is God? Is God real? If yes, then what? If the Christian God wanted us to communicate information to others, why wouldn't he provide it through the Bible if that's his, message to humanity and everything? Why does he need Greg here to be the one to communicate to us how all of this works? Just the fact that he has to be the one explaining this makes the whole thing more unconvincing to me, because the Bible should take care of that, shouldn't it? I mean, am I being unfair here? I mean, when you think about it more than just a few seconds, it seems really arrogant that you think God is using you because the Bible wasn't good enough to communicate this message. And this is something religious charlatans do all the time. All right, let's go ahead and concentrate on killing Batwoon real quick. Come on now. Oh, come on now. There we go. We got him. Fantastic. Now, the fact that Greg is sharing all this that the Bible couldn't share with us, it makes a lot of sense if Christianity is not true. Because then Greg is just continuing the cycle of men writing down what they think God wants, but it's really just the words of fallible men. I mean, that's really ultimately what I see the Bible as being, unless I'm shown to be wrong there, which of course I could always be wrong. But from what I'm seeing, it looks like it's all just, man's words, not God's word. It's political, it's religious teachings that men came up with. I also find it interesting that Greg refers to the biblical narrative as a story with components of good storytelling. Why would it need good components of storytelling if it's true? Why? We're going to focus here while we battle Dragon and Dragon's little babies here. Come on out to play. Come on out to play. We're going to just cheese Dragon here by electrocuting her. Or him. I think it's a her. I'm pretty sure. Thanks for the feedback, Robin1957. I appreciate that. All right, we got Dragon. So with that, let's go ahead and continue.
You also have our story writ large, so to speak. So our story starts with God, then he creates man to be in friendship with him, and human beings get themselves in a heap of trouble, and so God initiates a rescue plan.
But that rescue plan is to rescue people from himself. How does this make sense at all? Wait, this does all make sense to me now when I think about the almighty ham and cheese sandwich. Check it out. The moon is falling towards the earth right now. When the moon crashes into the earth, which could happen at any moment, you need to believe in the ham and cheese sandwich with all of your heart. If you do, the sandwich can rescue you. Of course, the almighty sandwich started the process of the moon falling towards the earth because it was the sandwich that actually gave the moon a push moving towards the earth in the first place. If you create the threat, then provide a way of avoiding the threat, you aren't a hero. You're a jerk and a D-bag. Just plain and simple. You must be the bad guy in the story if that's how you're managing things. It reminds me a lot of that meme that's been going around Facebook and other places where it has Jesus knocking on the door of somebody's home, saying knock and I'll, open the door and I'll come into you. That whole trope of Christianity. Well, Jesus is saying, hey, this is Jesus, let me in. I'm here to rescue you. I'm here to save you. And the person behind the door says, save me from what? And Jesus replies with, from what I'm going to do to you if you don't open the door. Pretty much that's what it is. I mean, when you break it down to its simplest components and parts, that's what the Christian story really is. At least that's the way I'm seeing it. I could be wrong. Feel free to chat, make comments, anything if you think that I'm wrong in this. But I don't see how I'm being unfair there. But maybe I am. Anyway, let's continue.
And this is key about the Christian worldview. Yes. This is the only worldview in which man does not rescue himself, because he cannot.
Which is exactly how God would do it.
Exactly.
That's what's so funny.
Wrong, 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 wrong. The eternal ham and cheese sandwich is also rescuing us from the moon that is falling towards the earth. We cannot rescue ourselves from the falling moon. We have to trust and believe in the ham and cheese sandwich to rescue us. Yeah, it makes just as much sense. Like I said, if you're the one who creates the threat in the first place, you're not the hero for then offering a way to get out of the threat. It's more like, that's extortion. That's not love. That's not rescuing somebody in some kind of noble way. I just don't see that. Also, Jim said that this is exactly how God would do it. Like, what does he even mean by that? Because so far, the God that they believe in, Jim and Greg here, that God to me sounds like a total D-bag, a total jerk. So saying that that's exactly how God would do it, are you saying that's how you see him as being a jerk? Because it sounds very jerkish if anybody else in any other context were to do that to you. Let's go ahead and continue on.
So God sets up a rescue plan and becomes a human being himself to be able to rescue us. And he does that by the way he lives his life. So now we got God-man Jesus, and the way he dies on a cross. That's the fourth point. And what we do about what he did for us determines what happens to everyone in the final resurrection.
So God sets up a rescue plan to save us from himself. He sacrifices himself to himself to save us from himself. Greg even says that he became a human being so he is able to rescue us. So he can't even rescue us without going through all of these hoops that he made for himself. I mean, he's supposed to be all-powerful or maximally powerful or whatever, right? If you're maximally powerful, you're creating the rules on how this stuff works. So God didn't have to do, Jesus didn't have to do anything. He could have snapped his fingers like Thanos and just made it all work the way he wanted it to, right? Is Thanos more powerful than God? Come on now. This is a negative side effect of trying to make monotheism work in situations where it makes no sense. In ancient times when polytheism was more popular, the belief in multiple gods, not just one. You could blame bad events on other gods, right? It's another tribe's god that did that bad thing to you, so you need your god to go kick its butt, right? The devil or Satan helps to fulfill this role in Christianity to some degree, but it still doesn't make sense because the Christian God is supposedly in control even over the devil. I mean, the graceful ham and cheese sandwich sets up a rescue plan that becomes a physical ham and cheese sandwich to be able to rescue us. And it does that by the way it tastes really, really good and how it dies by being eaten by sinners. But wait, there's more. Now we must believe in all this or it doesn't count at all. Boy, this is rough, and I'm telling you, this is not an impressive demonstration of critical thinking at all. But let's continue.
So we have how the world began, how it ends, and everything important.
Well,
that
we're going to hit
happens in
these. So
between. Yes.
the concept of God again.
The God is the beginning. And the reason that God is the beginning is because he's the first person, the first character, so to speak, in the story. And the reason is because the story is about God. It is not about us. We come second.
And this is one of the most harmful messages of Christianity in general. It's about denying yourself, your needs, your desires, your values, and your passions, and instead deferring to a God that you cannot verify or demonstrate without relying on logical fallacies. For example, many right-wing voters in our country actively vote against their own interests and well-being because they are convinced that voting for whatever their God wants is the priority, not what they want or need. This leads to the stripping of personal rights and liberty. We can see this in action right now with the many states that are in the U.S. that are making abortion straight right up illegal. I was just reading about a 10-year-old girl who had to make the trip from Ohio to another state to get an abortion. This is disgusting for many reasons, but it's a perfect example about how people are losing the rights over their own bodies just to appeal to what they believe a God wants. Not only that, but their choices are taking away bodily autonomy from people who don't even share these same views. It is atrociously awful and evil. All right, before we get to Ridley's lair here, let's go ahead and see what more rough stuff Greg has to say here. It's pretty cringy.
We come second. Now, the reason I say this is a lot of people get this confused. And when I was a kid, my mom used to say, Gregory, she's speaking seriously now when she's got my first name, or Gregory Paul.
What's on your license?
There you go, right. The world does not revolve. You guys could probably finish this
around you.
Around you.
The world does not revolve around you, my faithful audience. It revolves around the righteous ham and cheese sandwich. Believe in the sandwich. Believe before it's too late.
We learn it then, but we forget it when we grow up. Especially, I think, when we become Christians, because we think God is now in the equation to make our life perfect. But no, we're not first, we're second. God's purposes are first.
The highly exalted ham and cheese sandwich's purposes are first. You don't want the moon to fall and kill you in your sleep, do you? You better begin believing in the sandwich now before it's too late. You better also vote for all the political positions the sandwich endorses. Otherwise, you are a terrible person and you don't deserve to get rescued, you D-bag. We're about to fight the golden chorizo demon. Let's hope this goes smoothly. Go up there and get that secret super missile. We're just going to use some charge beam shots here to get them. The plasma beam charge shot is pretty powerful. One reason I got it, because it's going to be very helpful against Ridley in a few minutes. Got him. All right, let's continue.
And this is where I turn a certain Christian slogan on its head a little bit, and meaning no disrespect here. I really don't think it's about so much about God's wonderful plan for our lives as it is about our lives for God's wonderful plan. So we're expendable in this program. We
That's
come
really well
second.
said. That's critical for people to slow down and hear that
the
again.
co-
Say it.
That is perhaps the most screwed up thing I've heard Greg say so far. And this idiot Jim is actually agreeing with him. Unbelievable. Greg seems to be saying here that the plan is the priority. Not us, not God's children, not his creation. The plan is the important part, not us. As Greg just said, we are expendable. Imagine for a second that we talked about marriage this way. Oh crap. One sec, I am about to drown in this lava. I need to get up here, and up here, and up here. There we go. For a second, imagine that we talked about marriage this way. The marriage isn't about you, honey. You were made for this marriage, and you are expendable in this. This goes right back to the point I made earlier. If you are trained or programmed to consider what a god or a sandwich wants over your own interests, it's the perfect way to brainwash and control people. That's how the Republican Party in the States does it. They brainwash their people to say no to their own interests, and Christianity is a huge utility in their tool belt to assist in this. Christianity is a tool for gaining power for the Republicans in a big way. All right, let's fight Ridley now and we'll continue. Oh, come on. Come on now. Just die already. All right, we got him. All right, so let's go ahead and continue.
Bible emphasizes that God is first. So when we start the story out, and this is explanation, gentlemen, not just for the Christian to get it straight, because for a lot of Christians, their story, their picture of reality is like a puzzle that's in a pile of pieces. They've never put it together before. And this is what the story of reality is meant to do. Put it together in a sequential form so we can see the big picture. And the first part of that story is God. He's the center. He's the most important player. The story is about him, not us.
Yeah.
Again, you are trying to communicate something to us that your God was unable to clearly communicate. My first question is why? Why is it that after, 2020 years, whatever, after Jesus came, finally he's going to reveal everything to us through Greg Koukl? Because we've all been without this crucial information until now. Like, what kind of jerk does your God have to be to allow most people to go without this crucial information? Maybe even going to hell because of it. Shouldn't this have been provided in the Bible if it's so important? I just don't get it. The very existence of Christian apologists is evidence that Christianity is not true. If the Christian God was real, he would be powerful and intelligent enough to show himself to all of us instead of relying on broken people who use fallacious reasoning to try and get to their God. Also, Greg is being very disrespectful and not acknowledging the all-powerful ham and cheese sandwich as the most important part of his life. Greg is being very disrespectful to the all-powerful ham and cheese sandwich as the most important part of his life. Greg, do you want to die in your sleep when the moon falls to the earth? You can't rescue yourself. You must put your full faith into the sandwich. Yes, Robin, 1957, I think that all of my former pastors would probably not be too happy with what I'm saying, but I got to be real. I got to be honest. I got to be forthright with how I actually think and feel about this. And I'm glad you guys are on this journey with me.
Let me ask you a question that's so common about evil. If God is so good, why does evil exist in this world?
Yeah. Well, that comes up all the time.
Yeah, Greg, it does come up all the time. I know everyone isn't as impressed with the problem of evil as I am, but I find it as a very compelling piece of evidence against the Christian God, at least in the way that modern Christians want to portray him. Basically, the problem of evil, to summarize it, is how could evil, or I like the term suffering, how could suffering exist in a world that an all-powerful God creates if he's all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-good? Because it would make more sense if he's not all-powerful. Okay, he can't stop the suffering of people in the world at that point. He's not powerful enough to do so. If he's not all-knowing, okay, maybe he can't know everything or be everywhere at the same time, so he can't prevent evil or whatever. Okay, it makes a little more sense. Still doesn't really make sense, but it makes more sense. But the biggest thing that makes the problem of evil a slam dunk against Christianity to me is just the fact that if God is all good, why would he design this overall system that included suffering in the first place? I mean, that seems like that makes this God a bit of a sadist, wouldn't you think? Like, he just enjoys watching people suffer, enjoys watching his snuff porn or whatever it is that he's into. I don't know. But this episode isn't about what I think necessarily. Let's see what Greg thinks about the problem of evil, shall we? So let's continue.
But it turns out that the problem of evil is not the problem for the Christian that people think it is. And the reason is, our story is entirely about the problem of evil. It starts in chapter 3. It doesn't get solved until 66 books later, right? I mean, if there was no problem of evil, there'd be no story.
It's a very telling admission from Greg. If there wasn't a problem of evil, there would be no story. Human beings love stories. Stories provoke emotional responses from us in ways that dry facts and figures just cannot. Because of this, stories are often used to manipulate people, using their emotions and their cognitive biases. I cannot count how many times when I have been asked for evidence for God, I was just given a story to demonstrate the God being real. Other kinds of stories out there exist as well, though, like UFO abductions, out-of-body experiences. We literally have people on this earth that you can go meet right now, groups of people that swear that they were all abducted by aliens together as a group. They all witnessed it together. It wasn't just like one person. They can give you details. They can give you what the aliens looked like and what they did to them and so on and so forth. They can cough up all of these details about their experience, and they can corroborate those with each other. Those are people you can meet right now. So why a lot of these Christian folks will reject the UFO stories but accept other stories in the Bible, it's just bizarre when you really think about it for just a minute. If you're effectively using your critical thinking skills, being swayed by emotional or testimonial stories is nearly impossible. You should always want demonstrable facts and evidence before believing something. At least something that's super important, you know? I mean, Believing that your neighbor got a new dog is not really something that's critical for your life. But when it comes to something that you're going to be orienting your life or your politics or all your points of view around, that's different. It should be heavily considered. If the more important it is, it should be considered in a more detailed and refined fashion. All right, we're almost to the starting point of the game where we get the morph ball again. Kind of cool how it winds back on itself, but that's how Metroid works, right? That's one of the things we love about Metroid. Greg is trying to demonstrate his beliefs by using a story, the story of reality, or whatever his name of his book is. I mean, it's right there in the title. Greg is trying to demonstrate his beliefs by using a story, and stories are automatically suspect when used as evidence for anything. Doesn't mean they're wrong, but you should automatically be suspect of anybody using a story to try to convince you. Stories are not data. Stories in themselves are not really good evidence. Not saying they're not evidence at all, but they're not good evidence. All right, let's continue.
And the important thing about evil is that first of all, it's part of our story, and secondly, our story is not over yet.
If the Christian God is real, the only way that evil could be a part of our story is if the Christian God wanted evil to be a part of the story. Doesn't he have full control over everything, Greg? Doesn't he know the future and every decision that every person will ever make? He knew up front the exact ramifications of his creative process, right? He knew exactly what was going to happen. So isn't he the one responsible for evil then? I just don't see how it could not be. Getting me a little riled up, but I'm going to be okay. Don't worry about it. I'm going to be okay. Let's continue.
You read a story like the Lord of the Rings, and you get halfway through it, and you're thinking, oh, this is a great little story about hobbits and elves and whatever, and then everything goes south, right? You got the big eye looking down at you, and you got that Gandalf gets whacked, and everything's a mess, and you think, what a lousy story. Keep reading. The story is not over yet.
Yes, stories like The Lord of the Rings are meant to be engaging by showing the struggles various characters have against evil. Absolutely. That's part of the charm of it, if you will. If the Christian God wants us to be engaged in this real life story, as Greg seems to think it is, and the God couldn't use anything other than evil to engage us, that's a pretty weak God. In that case, when people go to heaven, according to how Greg here thinks, when people go to heaven, does that mean that God can't engage us anymore because he's not using evil to do it? I mean, this just falls apart when you start thinking about it more than a couple seconds. This seems like what Greg is saying, though. Like there's no way that the God could make us engaged with him without evil being present. That means God having a relationship with us is contingent on evil. Why does God need evil to engage with us? That just doesn't make sense to me. And it sounds like a real cop-out of an answer and an excuse to me. Let's continue.
The world wasn't always like this. God made the world just exactly the way his noble mind intended. It was all good. But what happened, there's another figure in this story, and that figure is a very dark figure who tells our first parents a terrible lie. He says that the king cannot be trusted. He says that he's holding out on you. Do your own thing, make your own rules, follow your own way, and freedom awaits you.
So according to your beliefs, Greg, your God made the world the way his noble mind intended. You're then saying he created a world where he knew that unmeasurable suffering would commence after the tree of knowledge of good and evil was eaten from. He placed the tree there. He planted it himself in the garden, knowing that Adam and Eve would be tempted to eat from it. This sounds like a huge setup to me. There's no doubt that Greg here thinks that the serpent in the garden was the devil or Satan, even though the Bible never actually states this. There are interpretations that modern Christians have applied to the Bible, but if you actually read it and study it for yourself, Satan was never a character in the Garden of Eden. The snake was cursed to crawl along its belly as a punishment for what he said to Eve to deceive her. The interesting thing here is that the snake never told a lie. He told the truth at every turn. He said, "You will not surely die. You will know good from evil." All that was true. They didn't die, at least that day. The way I used to twist this as a fundamentalist evangelical before is I would say, well, they died a spiritual death. But that's nowhere implied in the text. Like, that's just us putting our interpretation onto it to try to make it make sense. It just doesn't. Okay, we're killing Metroids now. We're getting close to Mother Brain. But let's go ahead and continue.
The world gets broken. Their broken relationship with God, their broken relationship with each other, their broken relationship with the environment. In fact, what human beings do there in violating the command of God breaks the entire world.
Okay, if humans disobeying one command causes the entire world to become broken, the creation was majorly flawed. This doesn't seem like the creation of a noble mind. It seems like the creation of a sadist to me. This God knew that humans would disobey, so it's really the God's fault that the world became broken. Couldn't this God make the world in such a way that it didn't completely get broken because of one moment of disobedience? Greg also mentioned that this one act of disobedience broke human relationships with each other and with the environment. I guess this is how he explains tsunamis, hurricanes, and volcanic eruptions, because it still makes no sense. Why would this God intentionally change the way this entire world works because of a moment of disobedience? This seems the equivalent of gunning down your own children for not flushing the toilet. It's way outside of any reasonable reaction, in my opinion. And one last point about the curse of Adam and Eve's disobedience. Why punish all the animals? I was always told that the animals are now suffering because of disobedience. Why would God punish the animals when they didn't have anything to do with it? Like, why would I punish our pet for something that my child did, for example? Again, this makes zero sense unless God is a sadist. He just loves pain and misery and loves to punish people for no reason, just to watch his torture porn or whatever and get off to it. That's all it seems to me. Let's go ahead and take care of Mother Brain before we continue. All right, let's go ahead and continue. This boss fight should be pretty easy.
And this is why there's a problem of evil. And it happens because God has given something valuable called moral freedom.
Is this just the free will apologetic worded differently? So because Adam and Eve had free will to eat or not eat the fruit from the tree, all of us now are stuck with the results of their choices? That wasn't me. It wasn't any one of you. Plus, as we already established, this God knew that they would disobey. He didn't think that they would possibly disobey. He knew they would disobey. This means he knew in advance for sure that he was going to curse the world in the atrocious ways that he did as he was creating Adam and Eve, before he created Adam and Eve. According to you, Greg, this is all his perfect plan. So sorry, the problem of evil is still a major problem for you to contend with. The only way it isn't is if you give up one of God's omni-characteristics, the omnibenevolence, the omnipotence, the all-knowing qualities. If he is not all-knowing and all-powerful, then he has an excuse for why things went wrong, and therefore he could still retain his all benevolent or all good qualities. But if he is all powerful and all knowing, he can't be anything other than a sadistic and evil God. I mean, he has to be sadistic and evil himself, since he knew all things that would result from the way he created things. He had that foreknowledge. Okay, we're going to fry Mother Brain now. Come on, baby. Let's dance. Got the hyper beam laser from Mother Brain. Got her. Got her. Anyway, let's go ahead and escape here, and then we will listen to Greg here when we're getting close to the ship. I'm going to have to focus here for a minute. This is pretty fast and hyper-paced, because the whole place is about to blow, and I'm having to get out of there. That's apparently was Mother Brain's dying wish, is to just crush me in the ruins of Zebes or Zebes or whatever it's pronounced like, this planet. Doom, 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 doom. I'll shoot you, and I'll shoot you. There you go. Let's see if I can get this shine spark just right. Ah, I didn't. Oh well. I'll just have to climb up the slow way. Usually I can zoom up with a shine spark if I hit it just right, but I messed up. All right, we about made it now. Let's go, let's go. All right. Let's go ahead and continue while we're watching the credits here.
We are made in the image of God. We have a moral character. And because we're made in the image of God, we are able to have friendship with God. We're not like the other creatures. But that also has a liability to it. And that is, we could do good, but we could also do wrong.
No, we aren't made in the image of God. Humans made God in their own image. Or to be accurate, humans made thousands of gods throughout human history, many of them being similar to us, especially in the way they process emotions, wage war with one another, etc. I mean, think about the Greek gods. Think about the human traits that all these gods have had. I mean, even the God of the Bible gets angry and craps all over everybody and killing people and everything on a whim because he's just so pissed. I mean, these are human emotions being projected onto a god that to me just wouldn't be part of a god if it's worth being called a god. Why does Greg say humans have a moral character that is different than the other creatures on Earth? I'm sorry, but I see very little difference from humans and chimpanzees when it comes to morals. Chimps get rewarded when doing things that are good for the tribes they live in. They also get punished by the other chimps when sounding the predator alarm to scare everyone away so that they can eat first. All you need for moral intuitions is empathy. Our brains actually process pain and pleasure of others within our groups, and we feel a little of the same pain and pleasure that they do when we have empathy. Some people don't have any real empathy, and we call them sociopaths or psychopaths. Morality is something that happens naturally because of how we have evolved empathy. But let's go ahead and continue.
Man did not use the liberty that he was given well, and this plunged the world into darkness. Now what?
Again, if the world could so easily be plunged into darkness by eating a bite of fruit, the world's brokenness is a feature of this God's plan for the earth. It's not a bug, and it isn't humanity's fault. Since this God apparently knew the exact results from his creation before he even started the creation process, the blame for all the brokenness in the world falls squarely on this God's shoulders. He could literally see everything that ever would happen in the history of humanity. That includes Adam and Eve eating the fruit, and every war that would ever occur, every child that would ever be assaulted, every person who would die of starvation or other forms of natural or man-made torture, every dictator that would rise to power, every murder that was plotted and carried out, and even every non-believer that would go to hell. And then he said, perfect plan. I don't see how this could ever be improved on. What a noble mind I have. Give me a break. This is why the problem of evil is still an issue for your side, Greg. And you need to work on that. Thank you for watching the second video of my 4-part series responding to Greg Koukl's take on the solidness of the Christian worldview. I love seeing what others have to say about the opinions I've expressed and welcome you to participate with me in the comments. Please also take a quick moment now to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Doing those simple things really helps out a lot. Please visit and subscribe to my Twitch channel in the description if you'd like to join me and participate in these conversations live. Stay tuned for part 3 of this video series, and until then, keep being analytical, avoid those logical fallacies, and become a more analytical gamer. Bye-bye for now.